All right, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the PropTech Genius Show. And today's genius is David. Stifter. Okay, I got it. Stifter. All right.
Sure. That's right.
So I sometimes forget to ask my host because I am the laziest podcast host ever. And I forget, like, oh yeah, Amy, you're playing podcast host. Okay. So I forget to announce people's things. You've got to be able to hear that. Like, can you hear that?
No,
Oh.
Zoom's
Okay,
on it.
Zoom is on it. I have somebody mowing right outside my damn window, and Zoom's background cancellation thing is rocking today. So
Yeah.
that is super cool. Way to go, Zoom.
Yeah. I have some sort of loud bird over my shoulder, so I don't know if you can hear that, but there you
Uh-uh,
go.
not really.
Perfect.
That is crazy town. All right. So before we were talking about your last name and your wife's story, so we have to record that because that
Yeah.
was
So my last name is Stifter, and I'm a certain generation. There's this movie American Pie, and the Stifler is a pretty important character, and my wife did not want to be Mrs. Stifler or Stifler's mom ever, and so. Unfortunately, that's come back a little bit, but
yeah.
Stifler, not Stifler. But for many years, people loved call me by Stifler. So
Oh, I bet they did. Yeah.
it's the price you pay.
Yeah, I feel you. Nobody could get my name. So like it's like nice try.
Yeah,
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 everybody tries, they fumble it. Like it's Paul Vito, but I get Pilato. I mean, that's what I got a lot because I grew up on the border of Texas. And so I grew up in McAllen, Texas. And so it was very, we're right next to Mexico. So it's very
yeah.
Mexican area. And so they typically in Spanish, you put the accent on the second syllable. And so that's what they would do. So, but yeah, no, Paul Vito.
Yeah, but I will say at our wedding reception they did announce us as Mr. and Mrs. Stifler. My friends might have been involved in that. She was mortified, but you know, it's the way it goes. It's the way it goes.
Funny.
Yeah,
You gotta love
yeah.
friends like that. Gotta have friends like
Yep, gotta love friends like that.
very sure. All right. Well, let's talk about like this, you're the genius in the hot sheet. So hot seat. There you go. So let's talk about your journey. Tell everybody who you are, what you do, all those fun things.
Yeah.
Get into it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And before we get started, I just want to, thank you again. It's so many people talk about, hey, we should have some way to learn about these things and have a constructive way to talk and all of that. And you're actually doing it, Amy. So thanks and kudos to you. I see you, you're definitely growing your reach and connecting tons and tons of people. I look at like the LinkedIn shared connections, it's hundreds, and so it's congrats on you on building something really, really unique that's been, it's been needed. So, thanks for doing that. It's
Sure.
great to see where it's going. But,
Yeah.
but me, I've always been, interested in technology. So I've always been kind of a geek at heart, from when I was a little kid. I can remember playing a video game. This is back in the DOS days, and you had to type, the executable. I remember when I was a little kid, like I forgot what the command was in DOS, and my dad was like, type dir, which was directory, and then, lists them, and he says, look for the one that was like exe, the executable name. Like that's how you do it. And that was like my little
Yes.
6-year-old brain was like, oh my gosh, I'm a hacker, and since then I've always been really, really in love with technology, and and finding ways to just make things work easier with tech, but also really enjoy the business side of things too. So I went to college to study business, and this is the .com days. So I actually in the 90s had a .com. It was called College Web Guide, became SteamTel. It was actually a little story in the Wall Street Journal. We were the first social network. So back in the 90s, we had this idea of creating a college newspaper insert. So like, all these college newspapers, and the idea was it was founded with the guy who made Parade magazine in the newspapers. But if you want to sell advertising at a national level, you got to go deal with like 400 college newspapers, and you can imagine
Yeah.
dealing with a college newspaper is tough. And so the idea was we'll get us national circulation magazine that has ads, that we can sell to Ford and, the national folks that want to hit the college market, but we'll have a web portal for every college we go to. And we did it. Like we did it, and then it worked really, really well. Had 3 million circulation magazine, hundreds and hundreds of colleges. And then the crash came, and it was this brutal thing where I was going to retire in 2 years, and, I'm a a young man with big dreams, and the harsh reality of the cycles that go up will come down. And so about 2 weeks before graduation, the VCs that backed us were like, "We're done. Like money's cut off. We are out of business." And I'm like, "What?" So it's kind of a harsh reality. And so I found myself scrambling to find something. This was, bad economy. And if you want to get a good job, there's a recruitment cycle, and that's all gone. And so I was just looking for any job. And so I just sent out lots and lots of resumes, and yeah, I found out you can always get a job selling your friends like high price mutual funds. It's always those jobs. Or or I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to lose my friends. Or as a custody fund accountant, which is it's the lowest form of accountant. It's like the folks that calculate the net asset value of mutual funds every night. It's a tough job. So I got it. I got that job, and it was great. It actually turned out to be a really great start where hard accounting, not hardcore accounting, but every day you have a lot of pressure to get this right. And you have this small amount of time to go in and get the nav right, and if you're wrong, they fire you. It's like a no nonsense business, and every day you're going in there and you're calculating your nav, you're reporting cash, you're clearing trades. So I kind of got into this high pressure environment with high expectations at a big company. It was called Investors Bank and Trust. It got bought by State Street later, and it was a tough place to work. And so always being that geek, this was kind of the way of my journey where, there's this, in particular, we had these Bloomberg terminals. Back in the day, they didn't have internet where you could look stuff up. You had to go to the Bloomberg terminal, and I had these variable rate securities on my desk. So every night you have 45 minutes to calculate your NAV. You get it wrong, you're fired, right? And there's one Bloomberg per floor. So we're all like elbowing to get in there. And I was like, this is brutal. It takes me 5 minutes, and I've got to fight for my 5 minutes, and like everyone else is fighting me for this. And so I figured out a way in my off time to be like, is there a faster way? And this was the kind of the start of my journey where I was found out, oh, I could get this is back in the floppy disk days. I can get a floppy and like pre-program my QSIPs and like put it in, hit a button to get them all out. And I went to a tech guy and I'm like, can you get these back in my machine? He's like, yeah, we can figure that out. And so I did that. So I found a way to like take this kind of 5 minute thing at the end of the day that was like this time critical period and make it, 10 seconds of time with much more accuracy. Because you fat finger one of those things, it's a problem.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I kind of recognized, wait a minute, there's 3,000 accountants doing the same thing every day, taking 5 minutes. That's a lot of minutes. And I went to my boss. I was like, hey, I got a better way on this. Can we try it out? And he's like, sure. And so we did, and it worked great. It saved, and I figured out the math, how much time it saved, and I said, hey, there's more stuff like this. And so I kind of started automating my job. And so after I was there for a number of years, and a few years into it, I had really focused on automation. I went and proposed to them, hey, let me get rid of this accounting role and jump into a role where I'm making this stuff work for everyone. And really starting from that place of truly understanding the business side, right? I was the one doing it. I was the accountant doing it. And that's actually what I found over this 20 plus years I've been in this, is that a lot of really good stuff typically happens when the business understanding of it gets the right tech to come in, as opposed to the right tech parachuting in and trying to like find a problem to solve, and so that was the start of my journey. I was an accountant, and then I moved into a technical role where I led a small team of process improvement and really automating manual tasks in this company where it was a real kind of efficiency driven firm. So that was the start of my kind of my tech journey.
Well, no, it's super cool. I mean, it's, I mean, you felt the pain, right? I mean, and yeah, it's the same thing. Like I'm a tech founder, but I came from real estate, right? So
Yeah.
I know the pain. I know
Yeah.
what it's like to walk around and try to property manage when you don't have the data you need, right? I was there. I was like,
Yeah.
in the thick of it. So yeah, it is unique because product market fit is not a problem because you
Yeah.
know exactly what to build, exactly what it needs to do, exactly who you need to sell it to, the persona of the person you need to sell it to, you're going to already inherently know all the adoption problems that come along with all of that, and you have such a leg up of understanding that. And then you just got to find the tech person to help you build it, right? So
Yeah, I know. Then it becomes execution. Yeah. So that's definitely, I think a real important thing is like never losing sight of like you truly have to understand and empathize with the person doing the job that you want to help, right? And not just, oh, here's a shiny new tool, like you need this, right? Especially I think we'll talk more about AI later, but like everyone's trying to throw AI at every problem. It's like AI does not solve all problems. You don't need it for a lot of problems. Some are great, but a lot aren't, right? And a lot are old things that you don't need. this fancy new tool for. Before that it was blockchain. Before that, it's like always it's always the flavor of the week. But at the core, you got to understand the business and the problem.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think real estate's problem is that the data, it's a data problem. It's not an AI problem. It's our
Yeah,
data is so fragmented. And if we, but once we, but there is a big push right now, big concerted effort on how do we pull these data sources together? How do we integrate our software? How to, because before it was all like this, all the prop tech companies are beating their heads against each other. And no,
yep,
you're a competitor, you're a competitor, you're a competitor. And now I'm starting to see where it's a little more, oh no, we need to be integration friendly. If we're not
yeah,
integration, because the customers are demanding it, right? They're not,
yeah,
they're no, like you have to integrate. We have to integrate. We have to integrate. So yeah, it's
yeah.
super interesting. So
Data, yeah, data. Totally agree with you. Data is more important now than ever. It's always been important, right? I think
yeah,
it's this dirty little secret. Like no one really wants to deal with it because it's hard. Especially, you
yeah,
need good tools, you need good pro.
yeah,
It's a difficult thing, but
yeah.
it makes and breaks so many other downstream, applications. Especially if you're trying to do something with AI, you need data more than ever, and you need a way not just to do it as a one-time fire drill where you get everything clean at one point, but it's got to be like this continuous, something that you can trust
Everything.
forevermore. Yeah.
And it's changing completely forever. So AI is obviously with all its automation, it's groovy cool or whatever, but we weren't even ready as real estate as an industry was not ready for AI because AI has to have good data. So we
Yep.
don't even know how to get the processes to make sure that the data is good, so that the AI can actually interact with the data, right?
Yeah.
So we have to back up and take baby steps on what are our data processes? How do we do make sure our data is clean? How do we, all these different quality control things around the data, and how do we make sure that we're getting the data at the time that we need to get the data, right? So all this other stuff.
Yeah.
AI is not going anywhere. It's going to sit over there and it's still going to be there tomorrow and for 100 years from now, right? But you got to make sure that whatever the AI is interacting with is good. And
Yeah,
so,
you
yeah.
can't keep kicking the data can down the road, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
liability that eventually is gonna bite you.
Yeah, and
Um,
so it was another. I was on another show, and it and Maria Aiello talked. She coined this phrase, and I don't know where she got it, but the technical debt that real estate companies have is insane. Like their tech and their tech stacks and all this other stuff is just so far like not where it needs to be. Like,
yeah,
I'm like going, that's an interesting term. I've never heard of that term, but that's pretty
yeah,
cool because it actually
yeah. So
explains it, right? Yeah.
it totally is. It's like where are you putting your time and investment, and when you're deferring this stuff, just like maintenance, right? Deferred maintenance on a building, right? You don't fix that roof, those repairs turn into replacements. At some point, you have to pay the price. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I was so going on in my career journey, right? So I was on the real estate side, but after I spent my years at Investors Bank, one good thing they had was they had one good benefit, which was they reimbursed for your MBA. So I got my MBA.
Oh, there you go.
I went to school at night, so I was working during the day. I went to school at night, and got that and did well in MBA. And I got a job at Colony Capital, which is a big private equity firm, public companies. So I started there in the early 2000s as an analyst. So I was portfolio analysis, making models, doing that stuff. And when I got hired, they said, "Oh, you're a geeky guy, right? Your last job, like we want you to run Yardi. Like Yardi, right?" And I'm like, "Sure, of course, no big deal, right?" I never used Yardi in my life, never even heard of Yardi. And they're like, "You're the Yardi guy," and I'm like, "Okay, great, I'm the Yardi guy," and I'm like, "No problem." So that was 2005, right? And so I'm
Uh,
the Yardi guy now. And they had a new platform, a value add platform in Boston called Colony Realty Partners, and I became the Yardi guy. And so
there you go.
luckily, I had some really good reps at Yardi. And I just jumped in there, jumped in the test database, and I'm like, I want to, I get whatever new problem I get, I become obsessive, right? And I really want to like, dig in and understand. I think that's really important is, it's the more hands-on you can be, the more, again, you get that business knowledge, but then you kind of figure out what can the systems you use work well? What do you need to tweak? What do you kind of maybe use some unintended uses for certain things and kind of squeeze the most juice you can out of it? But that was a really great opportunity to be thrown in yeah, again, working with the Yardi folks and some consultants on just really learning the property side and
Mhm.
and taking a lot of different roles. So I was at Colony for almost 20 years, started on that kind of operations and analysis role, and had lots of different roles. I'm always kind of someone looking for problems that people don't want to solve. So I got a stint in compliance back with the whole registered investment advisor. That was a
Oh,
whole
fun.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
got one
Were
SEC
were
exam.
you the compliance officer for Colony?
Yes, yes. I did the ADV. It was one of these
Oh,
things.
oh wow.
It's
Okay.
like it was like, don't we have this deadline due? And everyone's like, yep. And I'm like, who's doing it? And everyone's like, and I'm like, I'll do it. And so figuring out like all that stuff, getting the Form ADV, all the compliance stuff, all the rules and regulations. We used Mints for the legal, and they obviously had some adult supervision, but again, kind of really dug into it. And I will say I had one SEC exam, which was terrifying because I was like, uh-oh, did I
Yeah.
actually do it or not? But we got a no action letter for us for
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
I think we were one of the very early ones, so they didn't know what it was. I think it was maybe be there. They didn't know what they were looking for then. They were like, "Where's your trade blotter?" I'm like, "Nope, we don't do that." So
Yeah.
it was good. So I did. I was one and done. I'm like, "Oh, I'm good. I'm good with this the compliance role. We should get someone else in there, and let me jump back into the technical." And that's where at the time Colony had a bunch of public companies and different things coming together, and they at the time were on a number of systems: MRI, Nexus, Yardi, Sage, everything around the world. And
Yeah.
they were looking at combining into one global ERP, and they wanted someone to run that project. And I had again kind of experienced the business from asset management to acquisitions to our DDQs and fundraising and leasing and everything. And having that geek at heart and kind of obsessive, let's go figure it out. And they recognize that internally, and so that was a big opportunity for me to go run this ERP conversion. And this they had some faith in me to say it's a big global conversion. This is your chance, Dave. And it was in those uncertain terms. They said this will be we're taking a chance on you, and if it works, great. If not, be blamed, and it'll be over for you. So it was a good opportunity to show my worth. And that was a really great project, but kind of a massive multi-year,
Oh
huge,
yeah.
huge ever bringing it all together in one Yardi instance globally, which was pretty interesting to work through.
Yeah, for sure. What other countries were they in? Did you have a
Oh,
link?
Europe, Asia, Australia. It was a global, Western Europe, Northern,
Yeah. You
Scandinavia.
had different languages. You had
Uh,
oh my God. Oh
yeah, and
shoot.
this is, and
Okay.
I think we were one of the earlier French installs. Like, people say, "Oh, it's still in France, you can't use Yardi," and I'm like, I'm not sure about that. And
Yeah.
working through the requirements and each statutory requirements in the country, that it was challenging, and not just from a technical perspective. But another, I think, recurring theme on this stuff: got to own the business. You got to become, either have people who become obsessed with the details, or you yourself dig into it. But also, I think there's the psychological aspect of getting buy-in on these projects, and how you do that, how you get people in, Luxembourg or France to kind of buy in on the people from America telling them how to do what they do, and when we
Oh,
don't
they
understand
love
what the
that.
challenges are.
They love
Yeah,
that so much. The French love the Americans.
yeah, they love being told what to do by their American counterparts.
Oh, well, that was fun. Uh,
Yeah.
wow, that's insane.
Yeah, but it worked. In the end, we got it done.
Yeah, that's
Uh, you
pretty
know,
super cool. I
yeah,
mean, that's, I mean, gosh, I mean, just the change management and the whole process of, that is insane. Crazy amounts of it.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, we had again a great team. One of the things I took away from my role at Investors Bank, where I had this team of like process improvements, I always started with like an accountant, someone that from the business that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like wanted more, wanted to learn more, wanted to. I always found for me it was easier to teach the technical skills to kind of an operator, and that's what we did at Colony too. There's always the kind of awesome accountant that wants to make things better, and you really encourage that. And so the team was made up of business first technical people, which made it much easier. The classic IT project, especially the big ones, where you make this like statement of work and you spend 6 months
Yeah.
on scoping things and all this requirement docs and all that stuff. I mean, I guess for some people that works, but it's a very like binary outcome. Either you succeed or you fail, and you don't find out until you spend millions of dollars and years of time,
Yeah.
as opposed to a more agile, collaborative approach where you're, being reactive and working on things. And that's the approach that's been successful for me, where being
Yeah.
much more embedded with the business, I think you have better outcomes, and you get better
Sure.
buy-in, right? And so for us, we were able to demonstrate, how this is going to improve the day-to-day lives, and you get some wins, and then you start to get some enthusiasm for change, as opposed to, resistance.
For sure. So that's a super cool process because it applies to any tech startup because or any, any real estate company that's in there doing tech adoption, right? So you had built your champions, you had done all that other stuff. So my question to you is, how did you build your feedback loops? How are you doing that sort of process to make sure that if there was any sort of because adoption is what kills the tech. It's not the tech that kills it. It's the people who don't know how to use it and they blame the tech, right?
Yeah,
And I know that a lot of tech companies don't do a very good job of this, of training the staff, telling them why, managing the change, all these different things, and then the ongoing training and support and the service after the sale and all of that kind of stuff is there's a lack or a huge gap there. And so that's what kills the adoption and the stickiness of your tech is because they don't know how to use it. And then their staff changes over and then the new staff doesn't know how to use it, right? So how did you build that system
yeah, yeah.
simply?
So Amy, that's a totally right on point. You could have the most perfect, pristine bit of tech. You could actually have a bad piece of tech, right? And they can both kind of work if you do it properly, right? And if you don't do it right, that perfect piece of tech can fail. And it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with the tech. It has everything to do with adoption. And so I'm sure there's different ways people do it. For me, it was effective being in the trenches, where I was able, my team, we would go sit with people. When something new is going out, we go sit with them and hey, we're using the new workflow system for AP. Like, let's sit and book some entries. We're using intercompany. Let's go sit together and do that. When we do specs, like, show me how you do it. Show me what you're doing offline in Excel that's rough, right? That you don't like to do every month or that. And
Yeah.
so you start to solve some of those little problems,
Hmm.
and then you get some credibility. And if you're on, this is again where I think, the world we're in with this hybrid and remote, it's a lot more challenging if you're not, there in person. But having that like empathy and understanding of what they're actually going through, um, that it's hard to do from a distance. And so I think for me personally, me and my team, we came from accounting. I have a lot of appreciation for how hard it is. Like, I've yet to see a tech company, a real estate company, where they're like, "Oh, we have we're fully staffed. Or, we got nothing but free time at month end close," right? Like, typically these firms are understaffed, and a
Yep.
lot is expected of these folks, and especially the people who are really effective. They have like the curse of competence, where it's like
I know. They get
every
loaded
problem.
and overloaded and more stuff on top of them because they're so good at what they do. Yes, I know. I feel you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so once you kind of take a couple things off one of those people's plates, like, they smooth a lot of stuff out for you. So that's what we did. We sat on the desks, we walked through it when we had that first, month close or quarter close with the new tech. We sat there, and if there were problems, we fixed them for them right then, right? As opposed to like, hey, your spec was wrong, give us six, like that type of thing. What happens is that thing becomes a shield and a sword, where like, we're playing the I don't want to be blamed for problems game, as opposed to like, let's solve problems game. And once you get into that, I don't want to be blamed for problems, it's going to fail, because
Yeah.
there's going to be defensiveness, there's going to be, finger
Right.
pointing. It's just a matter of time before it fails. So never looking to score points. And there's a certain part of vulnerability. Like, you're out over your skis, and if something goes wrong, that's on me, right? Like, I'm the one in charge. It's not the accountant's fault. It's my fault if something doesn't work well. And so you got to take your lumps too. If something doesn't work, if you're leading the project, that's on you. And there's a little, I think some people are afraid of making those decisions and afraid of like the consequences of making a mistake. But, I had my first boss at Colony was a gentleman, Neil Wasner. He's passed, but a few years ago. But he was an incredible, incredible guy. And he once told me my biggest strength is my naivete. He's like, Dave, you just have this like thing that it's going to work out, even when it maybe is probably hard. and you just kind of go with the assumption that's going to work. And most part for my career, things have generally worked out. So I'd say don't let the, don't let the fear of failure keep you from that. Like, oh,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. I think most people just want generally someone to listen to them, like, and they understand my pain, right? And then we can go, okay, well, yeah, let's see how this take. And they don't want to be doing the same things over and over that are painful every day, right? So if you can show them, like, hey, if you did this with it, or if you did that with it, or whatever it might be, and the hand holding is fine. I mean, initially you want to do that. Don't skip that part, because if you skip that part, then you're just going to cause problems later. Yes, I get it. There's fatigue. You just went through this whole process to get this thing installed. And it's like being a general contractor. As soon as you're done building a thing, you're like, deuces, I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this warranty service work BS. I'm done. Like, I
yeah.
just got through this project, and you have fatigue is that, but you still got to stay there. You still got to have people that can support them, and because it'll just come back and bite you, and you'll end up doing a bunch of different other stuff, or it will fail right in front of your face.
That, like you said, that like last 5% could
Yes,
make it a great experience or a terrible experience, even though
exactly.
95% of your other work is all the same. Like it's that last, those last touch ups,
Yeah, it's why every contractor hates doing a punch list. They just freaking it drives them, like, I mean, it's like painful. I mean, it's painful, but it's the most important part. I mean, that's what everybody sees, right? They're gonna
Yes.
walk through. They're not gonna see all the good things you did. They're gonna see all the bad things you did, right? And the things that bug them. That's what they're gonna see. So if you can fix those things, right? We had when I was back as a GC way back in the day, we actually had different crews. We had different crews that did the punch, because we understood the energy drain, and we understood
Yeah.
all the kind of different stuff. And so, but it is super key for sure. And so when you're doing your rollouts, especially nationally or internationally, how did you manage I mean, God, geez Louise, did you just roll it out in like sections? Like, this is such an interesting thing to me.
Yeah, no, it was because there are different requirements and different things we're moving off of, right? So we had this merger with North Star, which is a bunch of MRI systems and domestic and international. We had Sage in Europe, and the transitions were different and the challenges were different. Like in Luxembourg, it's a lot of the fund level stuff. So that was more Yardi IM, as opposed to continental Europe was more leasing and AP.
Yeah,
So we took we wanted to take smaller bite-sized bits where we could, recognizing that we didn't want to, so say we're doing something in Luxembourg, like we want to be able to handle the full cycle there, right? And not just take, fund reporting, but lose payments, right? And so
right.
try to find, think through the whole cycle and get that bit done. And then connect that to the other bit, which then connects up to the US mothership. So it was an incremental approach of that. And the interesting thing at Colony was, the saga of Colony had a rough merger with North Star, and we took three public companies that were, each had 2+ billion of market cap and turned them to one, 2 billion market cap company, making the
Okay.
little value disappear, which was not good. But that led to the opposite, which was spinoffs, and the work we had put into and the skills we learned and the lessons learned, and obviously lots of hard lessons learned on big global rollouts helped us later with spinning off these public companies, the Brights Fire Mortgage REIT and North Star, all these different spinoffs we did, kind of had that same thing. We recognized that we wanted to be able to be agile with it. And so we took an incremental approach on adding the pieces, but did it in a way that we knew we could, separate them later without, the lessons learned on the difficulty of adding them informed us on how we should, make them more modular to spin off later. And that was very, very helpful for the firm.
Yeah, very sure. So what did you do after Colony? Where did you go next?
Yeah, so at Colony, Colony has had an interesting journey, where again we had this difficult merger, and the one bright Colony's always had an interesting. It's like a phoenix rising from difficult times, where 2000s was rough, but we had single family homes that went on to be really successful with Starwood, and then we had the right before COVID, it actually timing kind of worked out for us where we had this difficult merger, and as a result we had to be transition a lot of assets out, and so We got rid of office, hotel, a lot of different things before COVID, and happened to start a digital infrastructure fund called Digital Bridge. And so the timing couldn't have been better, where we got rid of hotels and office and bought, data centers and fiber. And so from there, the whole company shifted to digital. We've sold 50 billion of traditional real estate and bought 50 billion of digital real estate, and that was a really interesting time. One of the things that as a recurring problem I saw was around accounts payable. It's not the most glamorous part of business, but as a
Yeah.
big global company, you're paying a lot of bills, lots and lots of bills. And so lots and lots of money moving around, lots of bills and approvals, and we had used a workflow automation. This, Yardi has PayScan, and there's Nexus and Avid and, a bunch of different tools to approve bunch of different great options on payments. And we had built a payment automation, which was a huge help, so much time saved. And this upfront problem about how do you get invoices in? It's one of these things that if you're
Yep.
not in real estate, you don't appreciate invoices.
Yep. Yep. I feel you. Mm-hmm.
And so we had this great system. We invested like a lot of money into our payment automation. Like, if you make a payment in Yardi and it happens, right? And it automatic bank rec is really proud of it. And so it's all kind of working until we had one person, this woman, Krissa, who'd been there for 30 years and knew everything about everything. She left, she retired, and we can no longer pay a bill, because Krissa knew. If I had a bill, I asked Krissa, what fund does it go? Because it says Colony, but that's not who's paying it, right? It gets pushed down and allocated. And that was like, why can't we pay our bills anymore? It's like, oh, because one person knew everything and they left, right? And that's what
Gosh.
clued me into like, hey, there's a real knowledge problem at the start of accounts payable around how do you code it, right? That allocation, it gets split 37 different ways. And everyone has that problem, from the asset managers to the GCs to the general counsel with legal bills, myself as, a managing director in tech, like the bills, the push downs. And so I was like, there's got to be a tool that can help my team with this. And so looking at what the ERPs had at the time, we spent about a year in the market, and they're going to get the basics: invoice number, total due date, some OCR. And this is, again, one of these problems where like the tech folks are like, oh, I got the stuff off the invoice. That's easy, right? And it's like, you're missing this coding part. And so I spent a year being disappointed in like people claiming they do this and they don't, or a template where like you're drawing boxes. And we got like, 4 months into that process, and a vendor changed a row and it all blew up. And we're like, okay, we had a dozen done, 40,000 to go. That's not going to work. And so this is where my geeky part of like, hey, I'm hearing about these new like AI models, and back to your point of data, I was like, the AI needs good annotated data, like unstructured data, still is rough. And so I was like, well, AP's kind of got a nice structured data. You got the invoice, you got the coding, like, can we unlock it? And after realizing that really no one was doing that, particularly for real estate, we tried it. We tried some of these models and using that kind of business understanding, and it turns out it's actually a perfect use case for AI, where you do have this nice, accessible, annotated data source, and by the way, you still have a human in the loop. Like, AI right now is like an incredibly enthusiastic intern that like really wants to help you, and sometimes it's got terrible judgment and it'll make stuff up for you. So it's like you still want someone looking at that. And the nice thing about AP is you still have payments. So we built this in-house thing to handle the coding and pushing it downstream to Yardi. And when we were done, some of the CTOs I went to and saying like, what are you looking at and doing with that? They said, show us what you did. And we showed them, like, we want that. And so I was in this, really comfortable, nice role, at a big firm. But I was like, hey, I had this itch from back 20 years ago when I had my .com of running something. And I was like, wait a minute, there's a really good problem here. This seems like a really good solution. I don't think there's anything in the market. Maybe I can go start a company. And so that's where I took the leap, leaving the role at Colony, and started a company called Predict AP, which is focused on this ingestion and coding problem in front of, the workflow solutions in real estate only. It's actually real estate, I think, is way more complicated than a lot of other industries. So you got to get like really into the details of that. And we've spent, millions of dollars and, lots and lots and lots and lots of time on like, how do you actually get in that coding where it's like, can you recover it here? You can't there. It's construction here. It's expensed here, layers and layers of complexity. And so that's what I did. I started Predict AP. It's been about 3 years, and it's going great. Like, it's a great problem, great it's the right way to solve it. And we've kind of grown from zero to, have about 65 customers now, about 20 employees. And we're cranking on, helping people code invoices in real estate.
That is super cool for sure. I mean, yes, and it's such a big problem. I mean, can you any real estate investor, especially in private equity, whether it's fund this, fund that, syndication this, syndication that, JV this, JV that, they all do it. They're all mixed, they're all together. Yeah, I'm at the heyday when I had 25 entities. Like, oh
Yeah.
my Lord have mercy. That
Yeah.
the accounting and the complexity which one, which project, which property, which unit, where does this go, and how we're coding it, and is it capex or not capex? Like
Yeah. And by the way, do you want like the skill set, particularly like multifamily and senior living, like the people on site, you want them with the tenants, right? You want them doing that. You don't
yes,
want them in the back room pulling their hair out, like trying to figure out
yes,
how to code this thing.
yes.
So there's a knowledge part, and it takes a long time to figure that stuff. If someone walks out the door, it's
Hmm.
going to take months and months for that new person to go in and all that. So it is one of these things. Like
Yes.
it's hard. It's so, customer specific. No one else, when anyone joining is going to have to take time to learn it. And it's not
Mhm.
necessarily where you want your like frontline people spending their time. You want them with the residents. You want them improving the building and not in the back room, like,
Yeah.
you know, going through paper.
Yeah, I had a controller, and she pulled her hair out every month with the property management accounting reports that she got, because she's like, this is coded all wrong, and she would have to fix it. And I could not produce my investor reports until the property management accounting, like she had to consolidate it all, and she would spend. And so they would have to, like, we had to force the schedule for them to send us the weeks before,
Yeah,
and we had to push her, we had to give a gap for like 30 days just for her to fix the accounting that she received, which was all wrong every month. It was
right.
wrong. She's
Right.
like, and it wasn't the lady's fault. The
No.
lady at the property management company was doing this for 37 properties. And I'm like, oh my God, how can one person do this for 37 properties? Hire another accountant, you crazy people. Like that's,
Yeah, no. It gets back to the point of real estate is yet to be overstaffed. I have an email printed in my home office where one of our clients, they have this woman has a portfolio of a few portfolios. One of them has like 30 something properties, so every single bill gets split 37 different ways, and she gets probably 50 invoices a month. So you can imagine, like, you're going into Excel, you're doing every
oh
one, and she's like,
my
Dave,
God.
it comes in, I hit 30 seconds later, and you're already done. She's like, and I can deal with other stuff. So it's like, it's not appreciated. It's hard. And you're right. With that
Yeah,
challenge, then it gets pushed downstream to accounting, and they're trying to fix it in those last 2 days when it's like a whole thing. And if
exactly.
it's wrong,
Yeah.
reporting's wrong, then, and the problem goes
Yep.
up and up you know?
Yes. And if you're a fund, you have compliance deadlines. And if you have another, like, depending on who your investor is, and your investor is institutional, you have to produce your reports on the day you say you're going to produce your reports. So, because they
Yeah.
don't like it when they get their reports late, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, so lucked into, I mean, that's what it is. It lucked into a really great problem I always
Yeah.
had this fear after I started the company for like 6 months. I was like, someone would be like, oh, you haven't heard of like Donut X, like the world's best AP coder, that is something I just didn't find, but luckily I'm pretty confident now that no one's really coding for real estate. There's just things that do it like for, I think other industries maybe a little
Yeah.
easier and like
Yeah.
manufacturing, but so far no one's really just focused on this. I think payments is the most lucrative part of AP, so everyone wants to win that, and we're not going to get into that battle. So
Yeah.
it's
No.
we're no,
Echo.
but yeah, it's a
I mean,
great problem.
you're doing the hard part, right? That's kind of what my company does. We're doing the hard part around data collection and
Yeah,
data and stuff like that. But yeah, no one wants to do the hard stuff. They want to do the easy stuff. They want to do the
yeah,
automations. They want to do this. They want to do that. But actually getting the data right and making sure that that gets done
yeah.
correctly. That's the hard part, right? That's
Yeah, yeah, and that's it takes a certain type of like, personality to jump in on like the not, it's not the glamour, like even in real estate, like, the acquisitions person's the glamorous thing, but like the people that making it happen, like it's still
yeah,
important. And it can, again, if you do it well, it can really let you scale, lets you be efficient, all that. And I think certain people are drawn, I think you are, I mean, myself as well, of like, I just had this memory actually of my first job back at Investors Bank. it was my first automation was not the disk. It was the hard. It was we had one fax machine. This is fax machine days. We had one fax machine on the floor, and for a year, nobody replaced the inks. We'd walk up and down. And actually, the first thing I did to help the company was to buy. I went to Staples and bought a fax cartridge, and like place the ink. And my boss was like, "Why did you do that?" I was like, "Because I don't want to walk upstairs anymore." It's like it is not important as like the other stuff, but it makes a big impact, right? And I think data, is not fun. It's hard. It's dirty. It's messy. It's an arduous thing, but like you got to do it at some point.
Yeah, I know. And the people I, at the end of the day, the smartest investors use the most data, right? I mean, they just inherently do. And if you're not doing it, then all you're doing is shooting yourself in the foot. I mean,
Yeah. There's so much there that people, no, are you looking at how you're actually doing for renewals? Are you looking at what your tenants are doing? Where's, all this stuff, people, it's just like, they're struggling to get to what did I do last quarter, right? Like just
I know. I
opposed
know.
to what do I expect to do this quarter? And then the ultimate fantasy of, or not fantasy, the ultimate objective of like, what do I have to look out for in the future? So it's just like, as your data and processes get better, you get away from this just like, oh, I know what, tragedies and great things happened last quarter as opposed to like, what things do I need to action now? And then ultimately you want to get to this forward looking, hey, what opportunities do we have? Or what things do we need to work on? And that,
Exactly.
again, is how do you deal with operations and data and those processes to get that in a place where you can deal with something when you can actually make a change and not just report on, oh, we had a terrible quarter because we forgot to, give that renewal option to that tenant and they walked out, something like that, where it's just a
Yeah.
reactive.
Yeah. Okay, you gotta hear that. He's like right out the window. Did you hear that? No, Zoom.
No?
Look at that. See that? You got a really loud bird in your background. You can't hear anything. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding. Yeah.
yeah.
No, this is awesome. No, he's like right there. Okay. All right. I digress. Squirrel. Okay. So what are y'all working on next? What are you just still kind of honing your product that you have now, or are y'all doing
Yeah, so so Yardi's been our primary partner so far. We just signed a partnership with Nexus, which is great. This is again, I think it's a hard problem, and on the surface it looks easy because people see this OCR, and so they take a step on that, and they say, oh, it's pretty easy to get invoice number, and then they get into the coding, and it's a bit hard. So that's where we've had this advantage of being fully focused just on this one problem. So we're expanding that partnership, and other systems are coming soon. We're trying to work through the remaining big ERPs right now, but also looking at expanding more into Europe. So we have some European clients now. There's some nuances there around currency and tax, and actually, date formats and decimals can be surprisingly difficult for international. If you have
I
a
know.
day,
They do
month,
their
year, month, day,
commas
year.
and their periods in the wrong places. What the hell? Like I don't understand. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, it's
But
hard because if you
we film in the wrong place.
no, but it's fine. If it was just one, you'd be fine. But what if you're an international company that has U.S. and Europe? That's actually it's funny. Foreign language was easier to deal with than commas and periods because you like, how do you know which one's right and wrong? So. And then also this other kind of ancillary things around this core, at the core, we make good coding decisions. And so things like pulling off ESG data, like utility utilization people want.
Yeah.
It's an interesting new generation of kind of fraud-based tools that are coming out. I think the dark side of these new LLMs, there's people with bad intentions are getting much better at creating more
Yep.
effective outreaches, and so we have a really great opportunity to use the core understanding of like, hey, how we think it's a vendor might be. We have a dozen different methods, and it may really think it's FedEx because maybe the logo matches and name and certain locations and things, but we don't because maybe certain things are off or certain like metadata is off that tells us it's been modified or things like that, and we could say, hey, we think it is trying to be this, but it's not. So why don't you take a look at it, and give people an upfront tool to say, hey, we think this is a bit suspicious. I think that's kind of the initial core of what we're getting at is, expanding that reach to more systems, getting more into ancillary data usage around utilities, better dupe checking, better detection around fraud, and continuing to roll out. We have 65 customers, which is great, but last conference I was at, there's thousands of firms there, so I'm sure there's still many firms that are still, coding the old-fashioned way. So, really, it's a sales focus, getting out there and spreading
Sure.
the good word.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're in growth mode, you're scaling, so it's always so much fun. You feel like your hair's on fire? You got
Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's hard, it's so shifting that role where I was an internal, an internal buyer of stuff, right? You can tell who your friends are when you go from a buyer to a seller. Who's calling you back? And luckily for me, I love talking tech. I love talking Yardi. Like, and there's been lots of people that left Colony, or I just got in touch over the years, and I'm always a person to work through a problem and call that. So that was really helpful. When I launched a firm, I was like, hey, I got this new product. Like, we try it out, and lots of
Yeah.
people, those initial customers able to do that. But it's interesting. You talk about tech debt, right? And like that term, and for me, it's been a real learning experience shifting from when I'm controlling tech just for my own company to building a SaaS product, and how you do that and how much longer it takes to build and test, and with SOX and compliance, and how you weigh, because I'm always a person that wants to say yes to everything, but I don't want my engineers to quit either. So how
Yeah.
you be respectful and understanding and empathetic to your customers' wants and needs, but you can't build a custom solution for 60 customers, right? And so how do you marry the wants of each customer versus the overall product trend and all that. So I find myself doing that, a lot of understanding where that common ground is amongst customers, working with the tech folks on that. A lot of sales and sales calls, which is new for me. I've never been a salesman. It's a very weird experience. But we have a head of sales. I get brought in when people want
Yeah.
to talk about the history and how it can work for them. But it's this roller coaster of emotions of high highs. You do a couple sales in a week, everything's great, and you go a week without a sale, and you're depressed, and the world's coming to an end, and next week you get a sale, everything's better, it's a lot more volatile, and so sometimes I'm like I'm in my 40s with young kids. I'm like, what am I doing? I left a safe, secure thing to take this roller coaster, but at the end of the day, it is a really cool problem. We have a great solution, and the team's really great too. That was something that was really, exciting to be able to build a team as a CEO, that is how I want it to be, and how we treat each other, and how we give opportunities, internally, how we share information. Like, I always felt like operations doesn't get included, so I really have a philosophy on sharing as much as possible, because you never know when ideas percolate and someone's
Mhm.
you know, driving to work and they have this idea, right? And so doing those things has been really gratifying as well, to be able to run a firm the way I wish that, sometimes I had exposure when I was coming up. So, I think it's hair on fire, but more good days than bad overall.
Yeah, I know I feel you. We were both founders, right? So no, I
Yeah.
totally get it. I mean, you're working on sales and doing all this stuff, and then you got to work on your company too. Like, so you're building the systems for other people, but you need systems as a company too, right?
Yeah.
And all the
Yeah.
different things on around knowledge management, like that way you're talking about, like they come up with an idea, okay, how do we capture that? And how do we get that into a feedback loop or whatever it might be, or how do we get those things to kind of scale our company so we don't lose those great ideas? No, I feel you. Trust me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Or
feel
like,
you.
crazy problem came up and we solved
Yeah,
it. And then
yeah,
4 months later, like, what was that crazy problem and how do we solve? We just had that happen, where
exactly. No,
very
I
unique one-off situation. And it was like, well, I thought we had a wiki on that. Oh yeah, let's go track it down. And you're right.
yeah, I would I
So
would suggest to you the APQC, which is the Association of Productivity and Quality Control or something like that. They're in Houston. They have a conference. You just got to go once every couple of years, right? But it's around knowledge and information management. And it's super cool because you get to go learn from like these high level Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies on how they handle knowledge management inside with all their employees. It's just,
yeah,
I got to go like in 2016. I walked away blown away. Like with the simple solutions I got to learn from like Procter and Gamble and this like the company in France that runs all the trains and the transportation in
oh my
France
gosh.
was there, and they were talking about this is how we were getting information from our employees and all. I mean, it's you walk out of there and you're like, Holy hell. Like there's so many things that you want to go do that you could implement in your company. And it's super, super cool. I'm just gonna tell you. And then they have
Yeah,
like, yeah, it's like just
A,
a great, great
AP,
conference.
APQC.
APQC.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's the other thing is like, it's a lot to learn, and it's also I think I don't know if you how Amy you feel on like balancing. Like you could spend all your time on any one of those facets, right? But
exactly.
you got to have just enough, not too much, right? You don't want to step on, like I have this thing where I want to give as much freedom as possible, but like, sometimes, you have to get more or less into it, into certain parts of it. But that's a harder thing for me where before I just had to solve the business's operational problems and I could put all of it there. But now it's keeping customers happy, keeping employees happy, balancing and making those decisions,
Yeah.
investors,
Yep.
sales, all of that. And, that's another life lesson that's, it's like you never stop learning and you never stop trying to, manage your time. And I think that's the more you can learn about folks that have done this and, learned, that's the other thing I think over time, experience is so valuable, right? You can learn things
Yeah,
the hard way, but better just have someone tell you who stepped on the landmines. I've stepped on plenty of landmines, and,
for
it's,
sure.
it pays off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as yeah, and the man, you have 65 employees, is that what you said? That's right.
25, 20
25 employees, 65 customers.
customers.
Okay.
Yeah.
25 employees. Like you're getting to the stage now where it's getting complex, right? You got levels in your company, and it's not just you and one level. You might have two levels in your company, or you might have
Yeah.
three in your company. Yeah, fun. Those are fun
It
days.
is. Yeah.
But but it's cool. You're watching your baby grow, right? And you're doing all these really, I mean, it's just it's fun. I mean, back in my days when we had our construction company, we were about that. I mean, we had about that many employees, and we were in 16 states, and we had all this stuff that we had going on. And yeah, I feel you. I mean, it's tough. It can be rewarding, but setting up, it's going to be really good. I mean, for if I could give you any advice, I mean, like
Yeah.
you're at the point
Absolutely.
now where you're about to scale, and if you're going to go from 25 to 50 before you know it, right? It's going to go from here to here pretty quickly. And you're an accountant, thank goodness. And so you can understand the financial controls and things like that. But balancing your financial controls with employee authority, giving them the ability to have authority and responsibility in certain areas, that's what you're going to balance next is how much leash do I give people, right?
Yeah.
You still have to control. So that's the balance that you play. And that's going to be super critical over your next year or two, I would think, and balancing that, right? And so trust me, I've been there, done that. That was, oh boy, and then we never made it past that stage because we kind of pivoted out of construction and got into development as we scaled down. But if
Mm.
you can push through that phase, right, where you're getting into a bigger, then you've made it, right? You've kind of made it past that where you're getting to 50, 70, 100 employees, right? You're doing, then you can have those financial controls to kind of push that. But it's just like this weird, gross
Yeah.
place that you're
Yeah.
in. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's too
Not,
big for you to manage yourself, but it's too small for you to actually truly have economies of scale. And you're just kind of in this, bleh, you know what I mean? And I've been there. Oh my God, is it painful? It's
yeah.
painful. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
fastest way through it is just acquire as many customers as you can and just push through it, just scale as fast as you can to get out of it because you don't want to sit there too long because it is
No,
truly
no.
gross and it'll suck the life out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we want to, it's again, it's a nice thing that we're not, the nice thing for us too is like we're an easy buy. Like we're not that expensive
Yeah.
relative to prop
Yeah.
tech. And like getting started, we're not the classic, like, oh yeah, we work with your ERP. Just give us 9 months to figure it out. We're like half an hour tech time. We'll download your history, ready to
Right.
go. So it's like a very easy project. And so that sales cycle has been pretty good. Once we get someone seeing the product, like, the nice thing is we've had, I don't think anyone say, oh no, our AP is great. Like it's all, we don't need it. It's just it's a matter of like, how do we get out there? How do we get exposure? How do we get in front of them? And then, I think, everyone has the problem. So it's just, how to reach the folks that, that
Yeah.
don't know about us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I feel you. Yeah, but you'll get there. I have confidence. If you got
Thank you.
65 customers, you're doing all right. You're doing something right.
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Happy
You're doing-
customers too, you know.
Of course,
Yeah.
of
We just did
course.
Realcom last week, and Bridge won a Digi with us. So that was Bridge Investments out of Utah. So it's nice to see
Oh, that's
little
cool.
kudos. So it was nice. We didn't even know. Like we just I saw them after, and like, oh, there you go. You guys, won a Digi award. So good work.
Congrats. That's awesome. That is so cool. Yeah, I didn't get to go to Realcomm this year, but I will be there next year for sure.
What conferences do you have coming up?
So we have we're hosting not I might not be there, but we have somebody from the council that will be there at the NARS IOI Summit, which is at the end of August in Chicago. And then Blueprint will be a Blueprint for
We'll be
sure.
there. Yeah.
And then we're hosting something at New York City Real Estate Tech Week, a part of with Pretech and Metaprop.
Oh, well, there
Yeah,
you go. Well, I
we're
definitely have
hosting.
to go down for that, you know?
Yeah, it'd be super cool. It's gonna be fun. It's a hackathon. We're gonna have a hackathon as part of New York City Real Estate Tech Week. So come with an idea, and we'll put
That is really
together
cool.
with a dev team and some college students, and we're
Okay.
going to teach. You can walk away with a prototype or a design. So
That
yeah,
sounds awesome, Amy. That's a plus thing. I
yeah,
love hackathons too, by the way. My dev team doesn't, but
yeah.
I
I
love
know
it.
they're pretty
I'm
stressful.
like I'm like these 68 features I want, let's just all hackathon them today, right? And they're like, it doesn't work like
Exactly.
that.
I know. But it's really just it's part hackathon, but it's
Yeah,
one of our because we are launching our university program this fall. And
that
it's
is great.
really a way to get the college students involved and understanding prop tech and all those great things. So yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
for that is so great you're doing because I had no idea about, Yardy World and prop tech world and all this stuff. And
Yeah,
it is I will say it's one of these things where once you understand it and understand that skill set and that ecosystem, like it's a very, very valuable thing to have. And I think a
yeah,
lot of people come from the business and kind of get into it and not enough just go straight into like I want to learn about, how this prop tech works and how all these,
yeah.
Arguses and already, all this stuff works in the world. So that's a great thing you're doing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, it's gonna be super fun. So we got some others that we're gonna
Yeah.
get hit, but those are the ones our main ones. And then obviously ours, which is next year at South by
Yeah.
Southwest in Austin, which is March 9th. That's our big hurrah as next year. But yeah.
Yeah. We'll be there as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Well, it's been such a fun conversation, man. This has been
Well,
so
thank you, Amy.
cool. Yeah, it's really, really cool. So if somebody, because I have all these real estate companies that like me, and they would like to get a hold of you to buy your product, how can they do that?
They can go to predictap.com.
Okay.
Get back to you very quickly, and we can do some demos, or we'll be at some conferences too. But PredictAP. Let me do my little background here. I can show the name here.
Oh, look at that. He's gonna get
Yeah,
all
hold on.
techy.
I had a nice view. I'm actually on vacation this week with my family. Where we saw the end of the Tour de France yesterday.
You
But
did? Oh,
yes, we're in
awesome.
France.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
That
we,
is
we gotta,
awesome.
we gotta see it was really, really cool. My kids got to see it. It's just a great thing. You sit out there, there's a little party all day, a little barbecue.
Are you going to the Olympics? Is that
You
what
know
they?
what? We're thinking about it. And we like everyone, I know a couple people in Paris, they're like, you do not want to come here. It is madness. It's like madness. The only Airbnb we can get was like incredibly expensive and like definitely not
Yeah.
in the part of Paris that they're like, you should not stay there. And so
Oh,
I think we
okay.
might catch. I think the U.S. Olympic soccer team the women's team is playing down here in Nice. So I think I'll bring my kids to that.
Oh,
But
that's cool. Is that where wait, is the Tour de France over or no?
yeah, it ended Sunday.
Oh,
So
it
they had a.
ended. So it ends in Nice? I didn't know
Well, no,
that.
normally this is what was interesting. Normally it always ends in Paris. They go down like the
Oh,
Champs like a bunch of
but this
times. But
one
since
is
the
over.
Olympics is there, they ended it in Nice, which is like once it's the only time it's ever happened. It's not been in Paris, and so
That's
we got a little Airbnb and you know
that's super
enjoyed it.
cool.
My kids got to have a special day, so my wife might.
Yeah, and you're in, a nice part of France, so
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
that's very
yeah. So
cool.
my little experience for my kids. So we're definitely you can see that. I don't know if you see the background there. We got some.
Oh
It's a little
yeah,
bright. Yeah,
very
but
cool.
yeah.
Yeah,
Anyways, predictap.com, and we'll show you how to help your AP coding. You definitely need us.
that is awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. Really, really enjoyed having you.
Yeah, great. Great speaking with you, Amy. I appreciate your time. Bye.
Bye.